This is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So to start the show, I like to use a lesson to just go through some different spots in technical analysis and trading. But today what I want to do is kind of combine that, and what I've been doing over the last month really is combining that with some research. And I get questions from a lot of people about the S&P, about the market, about the Qs and stuff like that. And obviously those are important to watch, but I think sometimes they can give you sort of a head fake. You're on the lookout for them to set up, and then you think it's time to be a buyer. But there are times like the one we're experiencing right now where you want to be more focused on individual stocks. So I want to get into that and start the show going through some individual stocks and show you how they look actually very attractive, at least the ones I'm going to show you, relative to the S&P. All right, so let's go ahead and start with that. Okay, let's start out looking at the S&P. I've got my 4 time frames up with the monthly in the bottom left, weekly in the bottom right, daily in the upper right, and an hourly in the upper left. Now, what I want to show here is really what's taken place in the S&P. We had this move to the downside and people got very, very bearish. All right. I follow the Investors Intelligence Sentiment Number. I know that Stockcharts has different ones, but this indicator, which I've been using for over 30 years, got very, very bearish. Everyone kind of threw in the towel. And it was just a really good signal down here. All right. And I'm sure other sentiment indicators are doing the same thing. Now, as we've pushed up and pushed higher, I've been looking for a sign that people are getting too bullish now, right? Whereas we approach the highs. And actually, the sentiment number, again, that I use is this Investors Intelligence, and it actually went down this week. There were more bears and there were actually fewer bulls. I was very surprised based on how the market has been reacting. I was expecting to see, people kind of throwing in the towel and jumping on board and just buying. And we're not seeing that. So I'm actually thinking we're going to have to break out. But when we look at the pattern, it's because I trade patterns. I don't necessarily make a market opinion and then just buy. I'm looking for a setup. And the setup here has just been an upward drift. It's really not a great pattern when you look at this specific setup. It made the V low. It started to pause here, but instead of continuing to pause sideways, it drifted higher, tried to pause again, now drifting higher again. It keeps just kind of pushing higher, not with any great volume. And when you look at it on a daily chart, you can see the momentum indicators aren't really showing that great a strength, okay? Now, when we start to compare that, I want to go through several stocks. I'm going to do it quickly, but I'm going to show you the key things that I'm looking at. And I think once you start to see that what they're doing, especially on these 2 time frames. Now, on all of these, the monthly time frame looks pretty similar. But what's different is the way it's playing out on the weekly chart and the way it's playing out on the daily chart. And these small little details can make a big difference in giving you opportunities to take advantage of the market environment we're in, where people are refusing to throw in the towel and get too bullish. Once people get too bullish, then we have a signal that we're getting ready for some type of a correction or a pullback or something like that. Just haven't gotten to that point yet. Let's start looking at a few. Let's start with American Express in the financial area. Now, again, same pattern on the monthly. Look at the good momentum characteristics on the monthly, but then on this time frame, we have the same V-bottom look, but notice how it went sideways for several weeks. No breakouts, just kind of consolidating sideways. You can really see it on the daily chart. And then you can also see how this just recently is starting to kind of emerge from here. Now, one of the patterns I look at, and it's in my course, is we're making a higher low in price while MACD's making a lower low. So we're getting a reverse divergence. We have a low ADX condition, and that's actually very constructive when we're in a consolidation pattern. We're not hitting new highs or anything like that. So I'm pretty encouraged by patterns like this. This is a good trading play. I would consider it a trading play. And, based on the volatility conditions that I look at, I separate the volatility by weekly and daily. And the daily is in a pretty good condition to play. So we can take daily trades right now, I think, with confidence that we can go hit a few targets. I'm a little reluctant to believe that we're starting a long-term move right now. But when we look at this on a weekly and a daily, and we take this daily signal, I think we can take advantage. And we could even look for a little pullback on the hourly chart, closer to the 18 on the hourly to improve our timing if we want. But let's take a look at a couple others. Now, this Fortinet in the tech area, this hasn't moved yet, but look at how quiet this has been. It had this gap down, and notice how there was no downside follow through, and all we've been doing is working sideways here and coiling. We're building energy for a move. Okay, and I'm sort of attracted by this because we have moved to the downside, moved to the upside. We kind of make a spike low, rally up, and now we're forming this sort of ledge. While the MACD is making, again, this slightly lower high, while this is making a higher low. This is making a lower low, right? And then look at the pattern on the monthly. Strong move, and then we're just consolidating sideways with very good momentum conditions. So really good pattern to be on the lookout for. Look at something in the consumer discretionary area. Very similar pattern, strong move. And instead of rallying up into resistance or anything like that, we're through resistance. We're getting through the moving averages, and we're using these moving averages as support now. All right. And then again, we get the same consolidation pattern on the daily chart where the MACD was overbought back here, and now it's worked its way back down to zero, and the ADX is now low. This is in position now to start a new leg to the upside. Look at something like Parker-Hannifin in the industrial space. Same thing, strong move up, and we're getting this consolidation. Now, one thing that's really important about this consolidation is notice how this 18 has been declining, and now all of a sudden it's starting to cup. It's starting to flatten out and turn. So working sideways, instead of pulling back, working sideways has allowed the moving average to get in tune. The same thing with the MACD, getting above the zero line and holding, and then having the ADX in a low position on both the daily and the weekly. When we have strong ADX on the monthly, tells us we're more likely in a pause phase rather than an ending move. All right, so MACD back down to the zero line. It's time to start watching this. Pentair, another industrial stock, very similar pattern, has been hovering in this area around 100, working sideways quietly. Look at QTWO, same thing, rally up. We get this cup. Look at how the 18 starting to cup underneath. Notice how the MACD is holding the zero line. We've got a pinch play with strong momentum on the monthly, and then we're getting this same sort of pattern where we're pulling back to the zero line on the MACD with low ADX, and now all of a sudden we're starting to get some DI. We could look for a pullback on the hourly there. Look at something like NOW. This one's actually pulling back a little bit and allowing this to come back a little bit closer to the 18, but it's still holding on a MACD basis. And now we're getting a zero line reversal here, and the two moving averages on the daily chart are coming together. So really attractive. I think these are good patterns to be on the lookout for. I'll give you one more. It's in the financial area. Same scenario. MACD works back down to zero. We have low ADX. We get above the two moving averages on the weekly, the 18 and the 40 week. MACD holds, right? And now we're looking at this sideways consolidation and looking for somewhat of a breakout, or potentially looking for a little pause or pullback on the hourly chart now that now we're getting momentum to emerge on this time frame. So be on the lookout for these patterns. There's a lot of them out there. I just gave you some instances out of each individual, some of the different sectors that look attractive. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabelstockresearch.com. I'm on this page right now. You can see at the top, I've got my advanced trend and momentum courses. There's 3 different courses now. I've individually priced them, or you can buy them as a bundle, and they are lifetime access now. So I changed that. It's not year to year. Okay. And then we have the individual package. I have about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video, weekly video for that package. That covers a lot of details into what I'm seeing for the week. So if you have an interest, go ahead and take a look. Also, the book is on the book tab. You can go if this is a good place to start if you're new to my methodology. Let's look at the QQQ. Again, I've got my 4 time frames up. I do have the weekly up in the top left. So monthly, weekly bottom right, daily upper right, and then another weekly with the zigzag and the relative strength and the RSIs. All right. All of these time frames have MACD and ADX and volume in the bottom. All right. And the bottom scales. All right. So The one thing I want to focus in on, because there's a lot of patterns like this out there right now where we had strong move to the upside with good momentum confirmation on the monthly chart, right? And then we pulled back sharply. But notice how we found really good support, came all the way back by the end of the month. Why is that important? Because the moving average line is only taking into account the close. It's not factoring in this big drawdown that took place inter-month, right? So that means that the slope of this line really isn't shifting at all. It's still got the same slope that it has, all right? Now, we did get a little overrun in the MACD. And what that typically means is that you get some form of hesitation. We have not seen that yet, but that could happen after we go to a new high. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out is that we've been talking a little bit about this little divergence that took place where we made a higher high in price and the MACD was making a lower high, all right? Now, in order for that to kind of play out in a way that you would be able to make money, you'd have to break the 18 and see this come down to this prior low. I wasn't really expecting this to fall apart or anything. I was expecting it to cause a little bit more of a pullback and come back into this area. But if you notice the way it played out, the MACD actually dropped down and formed a lower low while price stayed and made a higher low right at the 18. So we never really broke the 18. And then we actually get the reverse signal. I call it a reverse divergence. It's a hidden divergence because now we're actually looking at the opposite where MACD is making a lower low and price is making a higher low. So in this case, it has sort of confirmed the breakout pattern. Now, what I want to point out here is when divergence fails like this, where we have standard divergence and it fails, then I consider it broken at that point, and we don't really want to use divergence anymore until we actually break the moving average. So you shift, your thinking shifts in this type of environment. When you get divergence that doesn't work, right? Where you get a divergence signal, you don't get any confirmation of a reversal, you don't get any downside movement really, then you're thinking that we're in a little bit more of a stronger trend where divergence isn't really going to work. So be careful about using this indicator for divergence right now. Now, one of the things I am looking for, because we have this little buy signal off the reverse divergence, but we don't have a lot of strength in DI yet. DI needs to come back and take out this prior peak up here. See, I want it to make a higher high. If it does that, then we're going to start to see this ADX line start to rise. Then we have the potential to have a little bit more follow through to the upside. All right. If this never materializes as a higher high in green DI, then you could sort of expect maybe a marginal new high, and then it could immediately reverse if this does not actually confirm. All right. So the point I'm trying to make is that the MACD signals are a lot of times when they're not confirmed by ADX are more trading plays. They can go up for 2 to 5 days or whatever 2 to 5 bars depending on the time frame, but they don't necessarily mean that they're going to keep going and going and going. We need to have this ADX to have confirmation. All right. So that was the main point I wanted to make on this QQQ. All right, and that does hold true for the S&P as well. They look very similar. IWM, we're still in the same sort of nightmarish pattern in a way because the RS line is not showing any real improvement. We're not really improving relative to the S&P. We're moving up a little bit. We're hesitating here underneath the 200-day or the 40-week. We're hesitating right below the 18-month line. We don't show any real momentum characteristics that are all that attractive. Even on the daily chart, we can't get this ADX going, or even green DI for that matter. So I think we're going to need a lot more strength out of this, and probably going to need to pop through this area with some real strength. Or if we're going to see, number one, this index start to take over as a more more of a leadership role and have a better relative strength. And number two, that also would mean a lot more broadening effect in the overall market. All right, let's look at some of these requests that came in. AVGO is a fantastic looking pattern. And what I'll say is that this didn't make that deep of a pullback. You notice how it did break the 18-month, but not by much. It wasn't really all that deep. It didn't come anywhere near the 40. The MACD still in good shape. The DI lines and the ADX are still showing the buyers are in control here. And then we got a boomerang bounce as the MACD came down to the 0 line area. Didn't show that much selling strength based on the ADX on the weekly. And now on this move to the upside, we're getting good confirmation on an ADX basis. We're seeing strength in this move. It's making a much higher high than it did based on the selling side. The buyers are in command in this. Now, here's the problem. We've been hoping for a little bit of a pullback closer to the 18-week to set this up on a bigger, longer-term basis. But on a daily chart, if you wanted to go down to your hourly, you could probably get an entry off of this for a trade. It would be a short-term trade at this point. We're extended away from the monthly line. We are extended away from the weekly line. The only thing you can do with this is kind of trade it from a short-term standpoint. You need to be nimble, I think, to really adhere to good risk-reward characteristics. All right, EVR, same pattern. We came down. Look at how this did this on the monthly. Do you see how this came down and bounced right off of the highs from 2021, which were the peak before the bear market, right? So look at how that, what was resistance becomes support on a retracement. That's exactly how we want to use the support and resistance levels. So boomerang bounce, good volume associated with it, but we do have this overrun in the MACD. What that tells me is what we should be expecting is some form of a retracement or backing and filling or something like that before this is ready to go. Now, what that means to me is that the 18-week is declining. This might push up a little bit more, but then we should get some kind of a pullback closer to the 18-week, or kind of like what I was talking about in the daily chart where we go sideways for a bit while the 18 cups around, just like I was showing in the examples at the start. This could happen on a weekly chart, right? So that's what I would be looking for. I wouldn't chase this. It's up a lot in a short period of time. We need some form of a pause or something like that to improve the characteristics. Okay, ITGR, trying to turn the corner. It is through the 18 and the 40-month line. It's got a lot of volatility. Do you see all the tails here on the weekly chart? You see how we formed all these tails? So that's not a deal breaker. That doesn't mean that we don't do it. It just means that, you know, we got to make sure we're getting really quality entry here because there's enough volatility that you could probably get shaken out if you don't get the right type of signal. Now, based on the way this is set up, I would probably draw a trend line in across from this peak down through here, right? We form that, and if we break that, then we're probably getting something going again. The other way it could play out is if this spends more time consolidating, and then it turns into a little bit more of a prolonged reversal back to the upside. Certainly a stock to watch, but I think we got to be careful. I would want to see it get back up through that trend line break myself, all right? Okay, MicroStrategy. So I like the way this is consolidating. You know, we've had a good move. We've got the rising 18-week underneath. All right, we've got a pretty good look with rising ADX and a strong MACD on the monthly chart. And now we're forming, so this is right out of my course with the opposing trend pattern. So what does that mean? That means that the weekly line, the weekly trend is positive. Weekly trend is moving up here underneath. We can look at that here. You can see how the trend is positive on the weekly. Now, it's been consolidating, but now we've got a rising 18-week and a rising 40-week. So we've got that kind of underlying support, and then this actually goes in the opposite direction where the 18 crosses down below the 40 to the downside. So this opposing trend pattern works well when the higher time frame is rising. So I would be looking for a move back up through 400. I think, you know, coming back up through the moving averages, through this prior high, getting back up around through that prior gap, I think would be a really good sign based on the way this is set up. And I would not be surprised to see some nice follow through if it played out that way. SE, so pulling back on the weekly chart, we've got good momentum. We're forming a pinch play on this time frame, and we're also starting to get a sign of a counter trend or opposing trend pattern on this time frame. Zero line reversal has developed. We've got low ADX, but we need a little bit more here because we don't really have that great of a trigger signal here. We have formed. It's a little bit aggressive to draw this trend line in down like that, even though we've made a lower low, because it's at a different slope than this line. So I would probably want to see this take out these highs up here around 160, 161. I think if we get through those, then I think we can probably take a hard look at this as a potential signal just based on the way it's developed. Now, I would trade this as a weekly, daily, looking to take targets pretty quickly. It's pretty extended on the monthly chart. Look at SNOW. Look at the way this is cupping around and improving on a long-term basis. The green DI is breaking out. We've got improvement on the ADX on the weekly. We've got nice look overall. The price structure is improving. What we need here is a pullback. I think there's support now around 200. Look for some kind of a retracement in this one. Thanks for watching today. If you have any stock requests, you can send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com or just put them in the comment area below. Also, if you want to learn more about some of these techniques, I would suggest going to my YouTube channel called Invest Like a Pro. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.